Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Dude.
What is going on, man?
Good morning. Hey, you know, it is good morning. Good morning. I mean, I'll tell you, we started we started a little early here. I saw more moon out there than sun today.
Absolutely. And folks, just a little behind the counter. We do start early. We come into the Sober.Coffee coffee shop, also known as Audio Hive.
Audio Hive.
Here in Chicagoland, and soon to be Video Hive.
Yeah, right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what our barista Brian does on video.
The world is transitioning into video now.
I mean, we actually had a little chat yesterday about video stuff, and so I don't know. My face and body aren't made for video; they're made for sound. But we'll see how it works.
No, stop it now. I think you got a beautiful face for radio.
Yeah. So just. You're funny. So just a little, most of the time we just come in here. We have topics. We don't have, a lot figured out. It's just like sitting with us in the coffee shop, and that's kind of the objective. However, today.
Well, we cheated because yesterday we got together for lunch, and lunch turned into a talk about what we were going to talk about, which we hardly ever do. And, so I went home last night. Man, I just loved today's topic.
So I sat there and just took a picture of Mikey's notes. They're all typed. They're all in Word, all, single-spaced, all looking really sexy. So who knows what's going to happen today.
It'll
probably suck.
That's right. If I look down at them, that'll be something.
I know. Don't use it, man, because, I think your banter is better than anything prepared. But we'll see.
Well,
today's a new day.
Complacency. I didn't want to be complacent about this episode.
No, you certainly weren't. So is that our topic today?
Yeah, today is, I don't know what you are the master of naming our topics, but our sessions. But, complacency, just talking about complacency. And I think you said at lunch yesterday, man, Mikey, that kills. Complacency will kill you. And you said it with such experience, like you've seen it happen.
Well, I mean, I've seen it in my own program, and that's what we do. We just share our own experience, strength, and hope, and we kind of break our segments out that way. And we have our disclosures at the end, right, saying that we are not professionals, we're not medical professionals. All we're doing is sharing our stories. And complacency is a key word in my experience. And probably where it first, hit me. Well, let me take a step back from that. So. Whole life, I've heard the phrase, hey, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards, right? There's no such thing as standing still.
Right.
And I really have experienced that in sobriety, right? How about you?
Yeah. We talked about that. There's an episode we did on momentum. And
momentum.
Momentum.
Little
momentum.
Right.
Right, yeah. And I guess the opposite of momentum, forward driving momentum, would be that stand still places. It could be, and I think what we're going to talk about this morning, it could almost be worse than going backwards sometimes.
Yeah, so I had this girl.
Oh, boy. This is a PG show.
Yeah. Oh, okay, well, let me know. So Carrie.
Yeah,
Carrie was one of our guests.
Right.
And I remember several years ago, things just stick out for me. And several years ago, she was sharing in a meeting, and she's like, life is so frustrating. She goes, I seem like I take 2 steps forward and 1 back. Mm-hmm. And it just clicked for me, and I said, hey, I get it. I experienced that. But the way I do that math is you're making progress. Right? And I think it's, that ties in with complacency, that you got to keep doing stuff, right? It's not just a natural act. It is, complacency drives, lack of complacency, is backwards moment, movement in my mind. And it takes a conscious effort to plan action, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. No, absolutely. And, I did look up the definition. Because why I get all my knowledge from Google. You know, I think Google's going to stick around. I thought it was
Think
a
so?
fad. Yeah. But, you know, the definition is showing
I
smug.
think it's going to run your life in about 2 years.
About 2 years ago. Thank you. Showing smug or uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's overachievement. So kind of this satisfaction, you know, and I kind of stopped at that word because I thought to myself, all right, can you define yourself as complacent now, Mike? Because you're a pretty satisfied individual. And I couldn't answer the question yes or no, but I had to stop and ask myself the question. And I think that's what I've really learned in my short journey is that if you think you're at that level of complacency where you're feeling a little comfortable or satisfied, it might not be a bad thing, but it should at least be something you pay attention to.
So what just clicked for me as you were describing the Google definition and your words after is, you know, it's almost like you get to a point where you've arrived.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, hey, I've arrived, I've accomplished X, and you know what? I can stop grinding. You know, maybe it took a lot of grind to get to X, right? And I think a good analogy here would be, let's just say a year of sobriety, right? So people grind it out, right? They say, hey, I want to jump on the sober path.
Going 90 meetings in 90
grind,
days, right?
That's a grind.
Reading the book, connected with people.
They're doing the steps, right? They got themselves a sponsor. They meet with their sponsor every week, and then all of a sudden they hit the 1 year, right? And the big celebration, they get the tasty cake, right? And they get to blow out the candle.
They get the coin.
They get the coin. Right. And then they go home, they show their spouse the coin and the family and everybody that was mad at them before. They show them the coin and, whew, you know, I got here. I made it, right? I've arrived. And then all of a sudden, you know what? Meetings start dropping off. And, you know, interaction with their sponsor stops dropping off. They stop doing the things that got them to that year. And then, you know, I've seen it. You've seen it. You know, people relapse or they disappear from the rooms and they never come back.
Right.
You know, I always wonder where those folks go, you know. So how do you fight that? How do you, I mean, you've obviously didn't hit that year mark. You kept going. You kept grinding. You grind today.
Yeah, there's a term called the pink cloud. And the pink cloud is in 12-step recovery terms is you're kind of up there, you're not living in reality, and life hasn't hit you yet. And I was accused of being on the pink cloud for many times. You know, come on, dude, you're way up there. You're ahead of your skis. I was just enjoying life. But the way I look at it, what you were saying is I think of a Roman soldier, right? They got their guard up, right? And they're in battle. They got their guard up. If you put your guard down, if you take your guard down, you're going to get dinged. You know, at some point you're going to get dinged. And I think that's the way I look at complacency. You know, when I was thinking about it, and yes, I Googled, and most of the time complacency came up in work environment and primarily in safety areas where workplace safety is concerned.
That's
right?
interesting, yeah.
And it's funny because you're there working the factory and you got these machines and they're jamming, torquing metal out of.
That's how you lose fingers.
That's how you lose fingers.
hands.
If you're complacent,
Right.
if you let your guard down.
Yep.
And that's the big topic on Google when you talk about complacency is workplace safety. But I thought, how similar is that to sobriety? If I let my guard down, you're right, I'm going to lose a finger, or worse, I'm going to lose my sobriety ultimately. And it doesn't happen overnight, as you painted the picture. It happens over time. You just get comfortable in your skin, and you think you're okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to be comfortable in your skin. I love that. I'm comfortable in my skin today like I've never been before in my life, but I'm not complacent, right? So how do we fight? So we talked about our experience. You know, every time I got complacent in the program, I relapsed, period. Complacency equals relapse. And, you know, so I continue to fight. I continue to grind, right? So we talked about our experience, our strength. So what do we do to not be complacent, to fight that complacency. Because I think natural instincts is to take it easy. Mm-hmm. You know, I think the body doesn't like. I mean, I study this on a regular basis. The body doesn't like the grind. Mm-hmm. The brain doesn't like the grind. So how do you fight it? What do you do to fight it?
Well, I found a couple things that were helpful to me anyway. Dr. Paul by the Sea is a doctor who apparently is by the sea. Anyway, there was really 2 points that they brought out, and it really hit home to me. Number one was continue effort to self-improvement, a continued effort to self-improvement. And that doesn't necessarily always have to be AA program.
Right. So is Dr.
Focused.
Paul, is he focused on sobriety? Or
Yes,
is he
in
just,
recovery.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
And so that was number one, continued effort and self-improvement. And then number two, staying involved in the community. I mean, now there's some sub-bullets underneath that, but those are the two things. Continued, I love the way I look at life today. For my first year that you were talking about, my first year, I always compared sober Mike to drunk Mike, right? Oh, I know where my car is. I didn't puke
Interesting.
myself.
I've stopped doing that.
I stopped doing that too.
But I've got a couple of years. So
Right. So now I think
Very
about
interesting.
Tuesday Mike. Is Wednesday Mike going to be better than Tuesday Mike? Sober Mike. That's continued improvement.
All right. So the first thing from Dr. Paul is continued self-improvement. Mm-hmm. And the second one is
Staying involved in the community.
staying involved. So just, again, behind the counter,
Right.
You wrote down your notes. Well,
Right.
you typed them out beautifully. I wrote mine down. and they're the same daggone points. The same points. So I'm not Dr. Paul. But, so a couple, when we talk about strength, what tools do we use in the Sober Jam, right? Mm-hmm. So one is, for me, is page 86 in the big book, right? When I wake up in the morning, I plan my day. And I know it reads really cool, but when I was in my 4-month program back in 2014, we actually woke up 8 of us in the program, and we did this every day. Mm-hmm. And what page 86 says, as you look at the day ahead, plan your day.
Right.
What are you going to do today? And, because, of course, we were 8 guys sitting around in a circle together, there's no wimpiness allowed, right? You can't say, well, I'm going to sit on the couch till noon, and then I'm going to go to the coffee shop, get a coffee. I'm going to come back. I'm going to take a nap. There was none of that. I mean, when we planned our day, it was, and we weren't trying to one-up each other, but if you didn't plan a good day, a productive day, you got made fun of. You got mocked. You had to go back and do something else. There was no napping, right? So I still do that today. I really live one day at a time. Yeah, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. I get it. But when I wake up, I focus on today. What am I going to do today? What am I going to accomplish today? And how am I going to push myself today?
I love that. I love that, because if you don't have some chartered course for yourself, you're going to be. So in other words, if you're not proactive, you're going to react to everything that's going on around you.
I love that. My day's going to run me.
That's right.
Instead of me run my day.
Right. I think that's really important.
And then the second thing I put lined up with that is, wait, how did Dr. Paul put it?
Community. It was all about
community. Okay,
yeah.
So I call that service.
Okay.
So I think early in sobriety, now I tend to say no to a lot of things just because I don't have the bandwidth. I just don't have the bandwidth. It's not that I don't want to be involved, but I have a full plate right now, and I have to say no to things. However, early in sobriety, but I fill my day with great stuff, productive stuff, fulfilling things, a lot of service, right? But early in sobriety, I used to drink 18 hours a day. So when I stopped drinking, all of a sudden I had 18 hours a day I was staring at.
Right.
You
could build a model.
I probably should have. I love building models. I probably should have. Mm-hmm. But, I went to a lot of movies, to be honest, because you know what? Movies were a safe place. I could go to a movie, grab some popcorn, and I knew for, 2.5 hours I'm not going to drink, right? So that's just how I thought early in sobriety. I know we have folks that listen to us that are early in sobriety, right? But, there's a book out there, not sobriety related, called The Year of Yes.
The Year of Yes?
The Year of Yes. And this, and I don't have all, I never read it, but I know about it. Where this girl said yes to everything, every opportunity she had, she said yes to for a year. And it changed her life. And early in sobriety, there are a lot of opportunities to say yes to sober coffees with people, to sober activities with people in AA, right, or the sober community. You can say yes to taking care of responsibilities that you always said no to while you were drinking, right, like cleaning up, taking the trash out, cleaning your room, washing your windows, whatever, right? And there's service opportunities everywhere you turn around. Hey, we need a chairperson for the 6 p.m. meeting. Yes. Hey, we're going to get together for bowling, AA bowling on Tuesday nights. Anybody available? Yes. You know, so there's a lot of ways, and I don't think this is underlined as much as it should be, but there are a lot of ways to turn that 18 hours of drinking into 18 hours of at least positive productivity and service to other people. And as we've talked about before in this show, I think service is one of the keys to life, to living a really cool life.
Yeah, you know, I read an article. It was business related about complacency. It came from Forbes magazine, and they had like 5 points, 4 or 5 points, something like that. And one of the things they talked about was not seeking or taking advantage of new opportunities, right? And I think that's what I just heard you say. They're out there. If you just stop and pay attention, be in the moment, you're going to see opportunities to serve.
Right, but if you go into it, right, your brain is naturally going to say no. Right. I don't want to do that. I mean, I forced myself for the first 2 years to do stuff. I mean, the very first thing I went to, one of the most painful things I ever did in sobriety, I went to an 8-hour Uno tournament.
Stop.
And
8 minutes would be torture for me.
I'll tell you, a couple hours into it, I'm like, if this is sober life, forget it.
Yeah,
right. But I persevered through that tournament, and early on, I said yes to a lot of things that I normally would have said no to. Just because, you know what, I didn't feel good. My brain wasn't in the right gear, you know, whatever. I just want to stay home. I just don't want to go out. But I forced myself to go out, and it really helped. It helped me get outside of my head. And then I started saying yes to service projects, stupid stuff, right? Hey, can somebody clean up downstairs? Yes, I'll spend an hour cleaning up downstairs. And it started to change the way I looked at things. And you know what? It was those next action steps. So I wasn't complacent. And a lot of people suffer early, especially early in sobriety, because they stop drinking and then they don't do anything. And they're like, well, now what? I'm miserable. Right.
You know what really jumped out at me, and I hope this is on topic, but what jumped out at me is that for my career, the last couple of years of my drinking career, it was all about Mike. It was all about solidarity, and I didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. That when you were sharing your emotional feeling about going to Uno or cleaning the basement or whatever, I'm thinking that's how I was with meetings, Glenn. It was a painful for me. It was not natural. Oh, giddy up! I'm going to go to a meeting every day. You know,
right?
It was painful. It was hard just to walk through the door. I think what you said is walk through the door, stick around a couple of minutes. I think that's what the Forbes article was talking about. Look for an opportunity to plug in, even if you're not an extrovert. Find an opportunity to plug in, because even standing around cleaning up the coffee pot afterwards, you're going to be, in theory, interacting with another alcoholic. And that other alcoholic is going to help you in your journey, and B, you're going to help them in their journey. And that's what it's all about.
Right. So when I think of complacency, when I think about combating complacency or conquering complacency, you know, I think of, okay, then what's the next step? What do I do next? And probably the best, and hey, I'm not bragging here. This is not the purpose of what I'm going to say. But just to give an example of you and I on the sober path, kind of walking together, right? How we are not complacent. So let's go back a couple years, right? right? So I would say you and I are constantly looking for the next step of what else can we do. Now, maybe that's part of our personality. Maybe that's part of we forced ourselves to do this. But early on, we started chairing meetings, right? We started sponsoring people, right? There's a lot of action steps involved with sponsoring people, right? A lot of next steps there, right? Because you're not, you know, it's almost like having a kid. You're not just living for yourself. You're living for yourself and your kid. You're living for yourself and your sponsee, right? You're not just working the program for yourself, but now you're working for yourself and your sponsee, you know? And then we had this crazy idea just over a year ago, you know, hey, what's next steps? How can we continue to get the message out? You did next steps by, you know, starting a newcomer meeting, 6 p.m. newcomer meeting.
Zoom, right?
Yeah, on Zoom. I was there last night. There were like 48 people on there, right? That's not being complacent. That's, hey, what am I going to do next? What's my next step, right? And then we decided to do a podcast, and here we are, you know, a year later, you know. And
yes, yesterday we got together for lunch and we talked about, really, we began to talk about 2023.
Right. So but you know what? We are one of the top podcasts. Do you know why?
Why?
Because we're still around.
Yeah. What happens?
They become complacent.
They quit posting every once a week.
We absolutely suck, but we're one of the top ones because we're still
we're
getting
the only
on.
ones.
We're still getting
We're the
on.
last girl in the bar.
But if you keep looking online about these sober podcasts, you know, they come and they go. They come out of the gate, and they do great, and then they stop. Right? They become complacent and they stop. So yeah, I was going there. We had lunch yesterday. We have, you know, plans for video. What are we going to do video? What are we going to do YouTube? We don't have YouTube. Are we going to do YouTube? What are we going to do? What's the next step? Beyond that, we have a secret surprise. We have confidential NDAs. We can't let it out, but we got something coming on for 2023.
You know, I'm overwhelmed by, again, the analogy. Well, I'm overwhelmed by the fact that we come in here and we focus on sobriety. And when you're focused on sobriety, it seems that good things happen. There is so much going on in the world right now that if I were just sitting around, I'd be all torn up about what's going on in not only my personal world, but the global world. I'd be all torn up. There are things I can do about my personal world. There are things I can do about the global positioning right now. But most importantly, there are things that I can do to stay sober and help others achieve sobriety. And that's, I think, what you define there with your action steps is paint your picture of your purpose. Just give it a broad brush and say, this is the direction I want to go. Action will follow that. And if that action is keeping you sober, then the program's working.
Right. So you mentioned early on about titling this session. And what I wrote down, complacency kills.
Yeah.
Complacency fuels relapse. Relapse can kill. So, man, let's just keep going. Let's keep looking for the next step. Let's just keep pushing. You know, you didn't drink yesterday. I didn't drink yesterday.
I haven't drank in the last 18 minutes.
It's 6:31 in the morning. I have not had a drink this morning. And that when I was drinking, I would be drunk right now.
That's right. Hey,
so,
quick
amen,
side,
brother.
Yeah, amen. Quick side note, page 86 you referenced, you can find that in the resource room at Sober.Coffee. So not SoberCoffee.com.
No, there's no .com. Everybody's like, oh, I can't find you. I'm like, Sober.Coffee. They're like, oh, is it Sober.Coffee.net? I'm like, no. Yeah, it's Sober.Coffee.
And check out the resource room. And I'll check out that book, The Year of Yeses. If it's any good, we'll put it up there.
It's a year of yes. It's a girl that said yes to everything for a year, changed her life. And I would suggest doing that in sobriety. It'll change your life.
Will you come back and have coffee with me again? Say yes.
I'm not sure.
Say yes.
I'll consider it. Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely yes.
See you,
all right,
Glenn.
brother.
Have a great day, man.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@sober.coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.